Mrs. Tinuke Fawole is a grateful child of God who is alive today only because of God's grace and mercy. She is also an attorney, author, co-founder of Optimum Families, and international speaker with TEDx Talk that has garnered over 49,000 views up to date. Tinuke is a relationship strategist and feels uniquely called to foster positive relationships within families. She is especially passionate about helping immigrant families bridge cultural and generational gaps between parents and children so they can enjoy positive and loving relationships. Tinuke's personal statement is to encourage and empower. She provides guidance, mentorship, and resources to help women overcome challenges, build confidence, and achieve their goals. Her approach is emphatic, authentic, empowering, and focused on uplifting women to thrive personally and professionally. She is the host of the YouTube channel Optimum Families, the author of 2 books, The Immigration Gap and the Master of My Destiny, and she is actively involved in her church and community. While Tinuke is very passionate about her work and ministry, she recognizes and prioritizes her calling as a wife and mother. She is excitedly in love with her college sweetheart and husband of 38 years plus, Alaba, and their union is blessed with 4 wonderful children, 2 amazing sons-in-law, and 2 adorable grandchildren, and counting. The Fawoles have been in family ministry together for over 20 years, and they assist couples to enjoy and thrive in their relationships. Tinuke loves traveling and spending time with her family. She lives in Snellville, Georgia, USA, with her husband.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tinuke Fawole, and I really want to thank the Peter Abigail Foundation for inviting me to speak this afternoon. I want to thank you also for what you've been doing in the immigrant community, and most especially because now you are extending your reach even to include families. You've done lectures about economy, about business, about collaboration, and now we're talking about family. And as immigrants, we say it all the time that our children are our future. And no matter what success we attain, if our children are not doing well, if they are not successful, and when I talk about success, I'm not just talking about academic or professional success, but if in one way or another, they are not doing well, their well-being, they're having problems with their mental issues, their relationships, those affect us. And so I'm thankful that we are doing this today. My experience, I started working with immigrant families because of the trouble I was seeing as I was representing young children, 17 and under, in the criminal justice system. I was surprised to begin to see our immigrant children getting into trouble. And when I spoke to them, I found out that most of these problems could actually be traced back to the home. So there were some mistakes that we had been making in raising our children that we didn't realize. They are mistakes, but at the same time, they are costing us and costing our children and causing a lot of problems, emotional disconnect, strained relationships between us and our children having mental and emotional health issues to the extent that some of them, unfortunately, have even taken their own lives. And so this is something that we need to talk about. So again, I thank you for this opportunity. And my talk is going to be in 4 parts. So I'm going to talk about just some fundamentals that we need to understand about our situation. I'm going to talk about what exactly those mistakes are, at least some of them, how to avoid the mistakes, and what to do when the mistakes have occurred. So starting with fundamentals, we have to know that I call it victim of our circumstances. I think us immigrant parents and our children are all victims of our circumstances, because here we are coming from wherever we have come from to America, for instance, and there's a way that we were raised, there's a culture that we had, there are ways that we do things, but then we come here and then we have to comply, we have to do what Americans do, and especially when we have children here, our children, most of them, this is the only society they know. So for them, if my father loves me, then he's going to say, I love you. He's going to attend all my games and all of that. That's how he shows love. But that's not the case with us. We express love in different ways. That doesn't mean I'm going to say I love you. I don't have to hug you. I don't have to even attend your games and all of that. And so our children have expectations based on where they're born and raised. And we have a way of doing things. And so there's that clash, and that causes us problems. And so I just want us to give grace to one another. I want us to understand what each one of us is, where we're all coming from, and we're going to talk about that. So when I talk to parents, what I say, you need to understand these things about your children. We need to understand that the way we grew up, the values that we grew up with, and the mindset that we grew up with, all that is different from our children. So we cannot just expect our children that were born and raised here in the United States, for example, to just think the way we think, to have the same values, and to just embrace everything just because they are our offspring and they have our genes, but they don't have anything about the environment. Some of them have never been to our countries, yet we expect them without any intervention to just do things. And in any case, no matter what intervention, they're not going to do things exactly like the country that they don't know well. And then we have to think about the fact that we assimilated differently into this country. So our children go to school here, probably from elementary school, even if they start from high school. They have friends there, so they learn the language, the food, the customs, the way of doing things. And then their friends are the people that they see every day who are Americans or who also have been raised here. On the other hand, when we come here as parents, many of us don't go back to school. And if we go back to school, we don't really interact. For example, when I went to school here, all the schools that I went to, I only went for classes and went home. So if they had anything they were doing together outside of classes, a happy hour, whatever, I couldn't be a part of it because I have to go home and take care of my family. So I really did not get into the system as my children would. So that is also a cause of conflict just because of that. And then, of course, there's a generational gap. So you're 45 years old, your child is 15. I mean, you're not in the same generation. So there will be conflict just from that. And then if you have an adolescent, maybe a teenager, their developmental age calls for them to want to be independent, for them to want to be autonomous, for them to want to have some control over their lives. So that's the ages that our children are in high school or they're just beginning college. And then you're surprised that you're just at loggerheads. And that's just to be expected unless we manage it properly. So those are the things we're going to talk about. So it's just not that you have a disrespectful child, that you have a child who doesn't want to do well, but all these things need to be put into consideration. And we have to think about the fact that that child, in a couple of years, the child who is 15, 16, in a couple of years, you expect them to be in college. You expect them to be independent and take care of themselves. You expect them to be able to stand their ground, even against what their peers are doing. But if you are not allowing them to develop that at home, if at home they just follow, and you don't give them reasons for why you say don't do this, then you are really not preparing them for the world that you are throwing them in. And then when I speak to children of immigrants, and when I say children, I'm not saying that you are a child, but if your parents are immigrants, then you may be 30, you may be 40, I'm speaking to you. So let's know that some things about our parents' culture. So many of us have come from cultures where people don't express emotions, whether positive emotions like love, hugging, kissing, saying, I love you, or even other vulnerable emotions like, I'm sorry, please forgive me. We just didn't grow up. Many of us didn't grow up hearing our parents say that. And so it's difficult for us to say these things. I'm not giving excuses, but I'm just letting you know where your parents are coming up sometime. Because honestly, I see a lot of things. I see young people, children of immigrants, writing a lot of things on Instagram, just bashing their parents, talking about this kind of mother that I had, father. And it really burdens my heart because I know that it is simply a lack of understanding most of the time. Many of us have not even come from nuclear families. Many people were raised with other people that were not their parents. And so many people, just the concept of, my wife and I and my children may be foreign to even some of us. How about the fact that when some of us come, we have to retrain. You go to school here, people complain about your accent, about different things. And you carry all that burden, you deal with all that outside, and you come home. How about people who are underemployed? Maybe you have a man who had a very good job back home, and then they come here and they are doing menial jobs, and that hurts. And if they are not able to express it, It might show up in maybe anger or impatience with the family members. I remember when I worked here as a nursing assistant, having come to the United States with a master's degree, but yet I started off here working as a nursing assistant. And I remember one time that I was accused of stealing, the woman that I was taking care of, stealing her $100. She had dementia and she didn't know where she put the money. So all eyes were on me. And I was so sad. I cried. I was praying, Lord, please get me out of this. And then thankfully, the woman eventually remembered where she put the money and brought it out from the deep, deep, deep down place that she had put it. And I was so thankful. You can imagine carrying that burden. If it wasn't resolved, I came home and then my children have all these expectations of me, but here am I dealing with all these things. So I just said that to let our children know that there are so many reasons for why we do what we do, but then there are no excuses. And so we're going to talk today about those mistakes. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is the first mistake is that we do not connect emotionally and we are not mindful of our children's emotional and mental health. And I'll start with a personal story. So my daughter, she finished college and we had a graduation party for her. Now, one friend of hers had died the day before graduation. I knew about this girl, but she wasn't one of the friends that I really knew my daughter to be very friendly with. So I didn't know her much, and I didn't know that she was that close to my daughter. So she died, and then there was the graduation, we had the party, and then my daughter had to go back to school to complete a job assignment that she had. So she was gone for 3 weeks. So then she came back home after 3 weeks, and I saw her by the dining table writing some thank you letters. And first of all, I was perplexed and actually angry that what was she doing at school these 3 weeks that she didn't write thank you letters to our friends and all the people that came for her graduation and gave her money and all the gifts. But I didn't say anything until she now invited me. I said, Mom, can you please help me address some of these envelopes? And I was like, what? You must be out of your mind. First of all, it took you so long to say thank you to the people that did this for you. And now you are inviting me to be part of this. I said, no. Thankfully, she's a girl who has her own voice and will speak. And she came to me later and she was like, Mom, you hurt my feelings when you said that. She said her friend died. And when she went back to school, she was like a zombie. All those 3 weeks, she said she really couldn't function. She was just, so sad concerning her friend. So first of all, my first reaction was, well, I don't read minds. So I didn't know how you were feeling. But then when I really thought deeply about it, if I had been sensitive to the fact that she lost a friend, I don't care, even if it was just a classmate, I don't care how close they were. She lost a friend. If I had called her during those 3 weeks, if I had called her to check on her, how you doing? Are you taking this? Are you okay? If I had asked that, if I had called her, then she probably during the 3 weeks would have told me, Mom, I'm really not feeling fine. I'm just here. Maybe I will even gone to visit her. Her college is just about 1.5 hours away. But none of that happened. So I took responsibility and I apologized to her. And that is the problem with many of us. We are not in tune with our children's emotions. We are not observant. We're not seeing what is going on with them. There's the story of the lady that, all these stories, I have a lot of stories. And this is because of the interaction that I've had with a lot of young people and what they've shared with me. So this lady said, I don't even know if my mom loves me. So she just decided she's 15. She said, she was like, Mom, do you love me? And her mom was like, what type of a stupid question is that? I work so hard. I buy clothes for you. I give you food. And you're asking me if I love you. Go and be looking for love somewhere. You're so ungrateful. And of course, this girl felt very sad. I'm just asking a simple question. Do you love me? Because she probably was expecting her mom to be hugging her, to be saying, I love you. And she didn't hear that. And she just asked. And the woman could just have pulled her to herself and say, I love you. I might not say it often, whatever. But she didn't do that. We have to know that mental health is real. And it is more common than we would like to believe. Our children go through one thing or another. They're human. So there's problem with maybe relationships that they are in. It may just even be their friends, maybe with their academics. You may think a child is doing well, but a child may actually be overwhelmed. They could be having problems with their identity, which I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So we just need to be in tune with them. Suicide is real, unfortunately, even among children of immigrants. So we cannot ignore these things. So unfortunately, I think the worst part is that we contribute to this even without knowing it. So I'm going to go through a few ways that we contribute so that we know that we don't do that. The first thing is to minimize or not acknowledge the feelings that they're going through and the struggles. So like my daughter came to me, if I just ignore that, I say, you know what, that's no problem, get over that, then that would have been a problem. But thank God I didn't do that. Not being vulnerable and admitting our faults is another thing. We are human. So sometimes we actually wrong our children. Sometimes we are the ones at fault. And our children have said that it's very difficult for us to say, I'm sorry. Instead, at best, we try to go around it and say, oh, would you like to eat? Do you want this? We start trying to do damage control instead of coming out right and saying, when I said that, I was wrong. When I did that, I was wrong. Please forgive me. That's what they expect. Leaving no room for failure is another thing. We're so hung up on success, on straight A's. B is unacceptable. Even when they have A's, some parents have the nerve to say, well, why did you get a 95? Why didn't you get 100? Where did the other 5 marks go? And failure is actually a part of life. So we're not even preparing our children for the real life if we don't accept sometimes when they fail. Rather than just judge them and condemn them, you're lazy, that's why you didn't do this. We need to be curious. We need to get to the heart of the matter. Like, if your child is not doing well, you need to find out why. You need to be observant. You need to ask open-ended questions to see if your child is going through anything so that you can support, instead of just saying, no kind of failure is acceptable. Focusing on outward appearances, on performances, or on what people will say. I heard the story of a girl, after COVID, a lot of people were home, a lot of churches were not open. And finally, this church was open and this girl came to church. And an older guy who wasn't even her friend just said, oh, look at you, you're so fat. What's wrong with you? This was a 16-year-old who was already struggling with the issues of her weight. She did not need to hear that in that manner. And so those are the kinds of things that show that we are not sensitive to our children's mental health and emotional health, and we need to be. The mistake number 2, we're all familiar with this, is limiting our children's career choices, telling them you only have to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, or whatnot. And what we have to know is that sometimes what motivates us is because of our own experience. So many of us have come to these other countries and we don't have our parents here, we don't have a support system here. And so we're looking for professions that are safe, that are secure, that I know that I'll always have a job. If I'm a nurse, I know that I'll always have a job. But that's not the issue with our children. The world is theirs, and they know that. They know that they can do anything they want to do, and there is a life, and there are great professions beyond those that we're familiar with. And sometimes when we do that, we just upset our children unnecessarily. Also, what they are looking for, the mindset, right? For us as parents, we are willing to work at jobs that we hate for many, many years because we're thinking, I'm going to retire and then I'm going to start getting some benefits. But our children, they want to enjoy that job now. They want fulfillment now. They want satisfaction now. They want to travel now. They don't want to wait until they retire before they do all of that. They want work-life balance. They want to be able to go with their children for lunch sometimes. They want to be able to attend their children's games. So you can see how the difference in mindset can cause trouble when you're trying to tell your child, you must be a doctor, you must be a lawyer. Like all that, it don't all go well with my plan for my life. So we cannot do that. What we need to do instead is to find out what passions, what gifts, what talents our children have. We can be observant parents to know that, and then be able to channel them in those directions. They may not be things that we are familiar with, but that doesn't mean that they are not viable opportunities for our children. So you have a child who is a good speaker. You've noticed that they're good in music, they're good in art. You can find summer programs that will enhance those things that may even let them become better at what they do. And who knows what they may become if we try to nurture those in them. I know I've gotten in trouble for saying this before. Someone said, well, you just want our children not to be hardworking, just to do what they... No, that's not what I'm saying at all. In whatever your child decides to do, hard work is expected. And you must know that they are absolutely doing their best, that they are not running away from some profession just because they are lazy. But if their passion isn't there, if that's not how they are wired, just make sure that whatever they say they are doing, you must tell them, you must work hard. No matter what you do, you must work hard and you must put in your best efforts. Another thing is that another mistake we make is not having open communication with our children. So there are a lot of things that we don't discuss with them, just because when we were growing up, we didn't sit down with our parents to talk. But the world is different, the society is different. When it's a new day, it's a new age. If you don't talk to your children, other people are going to talk to them, especially topics that may be difficult for us to talk to them about. Other people are going to talk to them about it. Some of us will just die if I said, do you talk to your children about sex? I'm not talking about the activity. There's a lot to talk about in this subject. But if you don't talk to them, guess what? Your 13-year-old is talking to another 13-year-old to get advice. So if we don't do what we're supposed to do, other people will do it. But more importantly, this is what builds connection between us and our children. When they find us a safe space to be able to come to, when they can tell us anything without being judged, without being embarrassed, then they will, if they feel good after talking to us, they'll come back. They'll come back to talk to us. So we need to create time to talk to our children, and not just about, oh, how was your grades? Oh, did you finish your chore? Just to talk to them as human beings. Like, what happened in your day today? I'm interested in knowing what happened at school today. I'm interested in knowing anything that made you excited at school today, anything that made you sad. We cannot be afraid to ask because of the answer we may get. We need to ask those questions and not close up question like how you do it, because then they'll just say, I'm fine, and you wouldn't be able to get any information. But let's be interested in them as human beings, and then we can help them. So we can do many things. Family meetings are something that can help. Apart from the individual connection is important. Just a few minutes a day, just make connection with your own child. And if you have 6 children, so be it. You got to do that with each one of them at some point or another. Pat them on the back. I love you. I'm proud of you. Just a few minutes with them. Family meetings are great. I'm thankful that my parents even did that for me growing up, and we did that for our children. We will have meetings once a month, to talk about everything that's going on. We start with affirming our children in whatever they are doing well. If there are areas of weaknesses that we need to point out, we will. And then they were free to do the same thing with us. Whatever we were doing that they didn't appreciate, they were free to tell us. And we told them, you can tell us anything. You just have to be respectful as you deliver your message. And that worked very well. And it came to the time where they loved it so much that they didn't even wait for us to call meetings. They called meetings because they had some beef that they wanted to discuss with us. And so it worked very well. We also had family fun nights. For us, it was Monday night at 7 p.m. and the children all made sure they finished their homework. This was something they loved because each one had a week. So if it's my week, I love board games. I'll say, let's play board games. And then the next week will be someone else's turn. And they might say, I want us to go watch a movie. I want us to play some sports. Everyone had their chance. Your chance is coming, that your whole family is going to do your activity with you. And there's nothing like it. It kept us very close. Another mistake we make is not being aware and being ignorant about the identity crisis that our children face. You may think that you have an American child, but they live in our homes, and there are ways that we pronounce some words. They get to school. It actually happened to my daughter. She got to school and pronounced a word in a way that was different from how her peers pronounced it. And everybody was appalled. What are you talking about? And when they finally found out, I said, oh, so that's what you meant. She felt embarrassed and ashamed. And she made a decision that she was never going to raise up her hand in class ever again. So these things are deep. Sometimes our children are laughed at because of their high hairstyles. I remember when my daughters were young, one particularly had hard hair. And in Nigeria, what we do is to thread it. I actually put thread on her hair. Thankfully, I don't think I heard anything negative about that. But, those are the kinds of things we do. Even their food, they have been laughed at. Immigrant children have been laughed at for the smell of their food in the cafeteria. They have been laughed at because of their names. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't give this food to them. I'm not saying that you shouldn't name them. All my children have African names and they are naming their children African names. And that's actually what you need to do. Name your children their ethnic names, but don't throw them under the bus by not preparing them. Let them know the meaning of their names. Let them know how to say it properly and how to tell other people to say it properly. And they really shouldn't accept any kind of abbreviation or change of their names. But you have to prepare them. You have to know that they have something ahead that they need to be able to deal with. So you need to do that. Again, we need to teach them our language. It's never too early to do that, and it's never too late. Even if you have children who are teenagers already, there are ways that you can teach them your language. And if they are grown, they really can teach themselves if they are interested. You know, they get to college and take on Spanish. And, you know, there are apps, there are different things that can teach children to learn their languages. And of course, whatever positive values are in our culture, there are some habits, some cultures that are not good. Children are to be seen and not to be heard. That's not good. And that's not something we should perpetuate. But there are other good things in our culture that we should celebrate and teach our children. Let's take them to our ethnic gatherings, you know, weddings, you know, different things. I remember when we started attending a camp meeting that was Christian Nigerian camp meeting. It just revolutionized our children's mindset completely, because then they found other children like them. Oh, so it's not just my mom that does that. So it's not just my dad that does that. And it just gave them a feeling of comfort that, so this is not just my parents doing this. This is just a cultural thing. But if we didn't expose them, they wouldn't know that. And of course, visit to the motherland. And I cannot stress that enough, because our children need to go. You need to make your connections with the people there, and they need to visit. Many children that I know that have gone, they have not forgotten the experience, and they've loved it. And my children love going, and they love inviting their friends. Their friends have gone with us. So we must make the time. You can't say you don't have money. You have to do it. The next mistake that we make is harsh discipline methods. You know, because I said so, it doesn't work anymore. So if you have children, you actually have to sit with them, especially if you have children, teenagers. That's where the troubles begin to appear. Just other than just laying down the rules and say, you know, I'm your dad and I say you have to do this, sit down with your child. You know, these are the expectations. These are the behavior expectations. If you're driving, these are the expectations. If you have a phone, these are the expectations. And let's discuss together. Whenever you don't follow the rules, what should we do? Let's discuss together. If they are being too lenient on themselves, you didn't know. That's not what you're going to get for that. It's going to be higher consequence for that. When you do it together and they happen to violate the rules, then they know that, you know, it's their fault because you gave them an opportunity. And of course, we need to agree, even as we discipline them as mother and father. Sometimes, unfortunately, mother and father are not in the same home, but you have to agree that it is about the child, not about you, so that the child is not able to get away with something here and they're not able to get away with something here. So we need to make sure about that. How about misrepresenting our faith? I had a story of a girl who just decided she didn't want to go to church with her parents. They asked her why. They didn't even ask her why. They just said, what do you mean? It's unacceptable. You have to go to church. They pulled her out of her room, beat her up, took her to church by force. She cried all the way there. Come to find out, this girl was being sexually harassed by the youth leader. So it's so unfortunate that the parents did not ask. So if you find your child going out of the norm, all of a sudden they don't want to go to church anymore, some other place, the first thing to do is to ask them. If it means you getting late to church that day because you are trying to get to the bottom of why don't you want to go to church, in a way that is not judging, in a way that is not condemning, in a way that is actually honestly curious. I want to know why my child will suddenly not want to go to church anymore. That would be better than just coming down and say, you have to do that. You know, the promise that God gave us in Proverbs 22:6 is that we should train up a child in the way that he should go. When they are old, they will not depart. But there's a how to that. And the how is found in Deuteronomy 6:6-9, where the Bible talks about, you know, teach your children, repeat to them over and over, talk to them when you're at home, when you're on the road. That tells me that it's a continuous thing. It's not just a weekend thing. We go to church on Saturday, we go to church on Sunday. It's not just that. Or that we go to prayer meeting. No. As you go in out of the house as you come in. So that means all day long as you're in the car, you are seeing teachable moments, you are seeing billboards that you can talk about. You're watching TV, you're seeing something that, oh, let's talk about that. You are teaching them. The Bible says when you are going to bed, when you get up, that tells me morning and evening devotion. And some people say they are too busy. If you are too busy to have devotion, you are too busy, because those are the things that will solidify your children. That before they go to school, that you pray together, that you remind them of who they are. When our children were young, we had a family creed, set of scriptures that we read before they went to school. And by 3 weeks, everybody knew it from memory. And I know that that actually impacted their lives as they went on. So you cannot be too busy. If it's 15 minutes, if it's 10 minutes that you have in the morning, if it's only one parent that's available, just make sure you do it. And then in the evening, you can have more time. And then, of course, we cannot be hypocritical. So a lot of us have positions in church, you are the whatever leader, you are leading prayer, you are doing all of this, you are preaching, but then at home, you are a bully. At home, nobody can speak to you. This sends double messages to our children, and they're not going to embrace this kind of religion if we are hypocritical. Let's share our struggles with our children and our testimonies. Let's have a praise journal. If we have trouble, let's discuss with our children. If we're having financial issues, if we're having whatever, let's discuss with them, even as the Bible says in Psalm 78. We should let our children know what is going well. And as we pray and we get the answers, we share together. These are the kinds of things that develop our children's faith in God, because they see it in action. Not just, once a week you take them to church and that's it. But the fact that you can pray about things and get results really, really help them. And of course, allow them to participate in church activities, especially when they're young. Don't send them for some other people to be doing it for you, but actually make sure that you are there. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is another mistake that we make that sometimes strains our relationship with our children, is that we don't let them go as adults. We don't allow them to just go. Now, I know that if you have an adult living with you, is a different thing. If your child decides, I'm going to live with my parents because I want to save money, I'm out of school, but I want to save money, so I'm living with them, then they need to know that they will need to abide by some things. They cannot be totally independent because they're still living in someone's house. So it's best to sit down together and make the rules. Now, this happened to us. One of our children, after her master's, decided she was coming back home. And then one day she sat us down and said we were treating her like a 12-year-old because we were concerned about when she was coming home and all of that. But we told her, it's two ways. If you're out and you're still living in this house, we're still worried about you, worried about what's happening out there. So we advised her, either you get your own place because you are working, you really can afford to get your own place. We wouldn't care because when you were in school, we didn't know when you came back to your hostel, and we didn't care, honestly. But if we are aware that, oh, she's supposed to be home and she's not home, then we will lose our sleep while you're having your fun in whatever you're doing. So we had to talk together and come to an agreement. Or when you are living where you are living, tell us, I'm leaving. So we kind of have an idea when to expect you. Everything went super well after we came together. So I will advise, if your adult child is home, even if they've been living at home and you haven't done this, then you can do this. Come together and make the rules together. These are our expectations. And then your child will also say, these are the expectations. And honestly, things go well when you do that. If you have an adult that is not living at home, they're living their own lives, honestly, you don't have any control over them. They're adults. The best you can do, if you see something that you want to talk about, you say, I have this observation. Do you want me to share my opinion? If they say, no, I don't want you to share it, that's it. You just have to go on your knees. There's nothing that you cannot settle on your knees. But in my experience, I've never had a time where my children say you cannot share. They know that they're going to do what they're going to do regardless of what I say. But they at least give me audience because I ask, I want to have this discussion with you. And if they are married, take your hands off. Your children cannot be married and you're trying to control their homes. If you go to their home, you're a guest. You need to abide by whatever they are doing. God forbid the extreme situation where maybe you're observing abuse, physical abuse, whatever, and you feel that you need to do something about it. That's different. But let them live their lives. Let them live their lives and pray for them, but don't interfere in their marriages. So now, as we finish up, I just want to say that, the Bible says in Malachi 4:6 that God would he wants to turn the hearts of children to their fathers, and that will include mothers, and also the hearts of fathers, which will include mothers, to their children, which is reconciliation. So things might not have been going well, but if we can come together, for us as immigrant parents, we need to become self-aware. We are not perfect. We need to know that we are not perfect. So there are things that because of our personalities, we may have rubbed on our children negatively. We need to become self-aware. Whatever we need to do, you can do a personality test. You can listen to what your children have to say, what your siblings have to say, what your friends have to say. You can make that inquiry, like, what kind of a person I am, and be ready to accept it and do something about it. So that self-reflection, self-awareness is very important. And we must be willing to admit whatever mistakes we have done. We must be willing to step out of our comfort zone. We must be ready to have an open mind. We have to be willing to learn new things. We don't know everything. And we need to be ready to unlearn the things that are not serving us well, that are not serving our families well. We need to drop them and relearn new things. We need to be willing to grow. We need to read books, listen to podcasts, videos, things that can help us. We cannot just remain and say, it's the way I do things and that's the way everybody has to accept. No, we have to be willing to educate ourselves and to listen to admonition or correction, even from our children. And I'll say we need to practice self-care. Many of us don't take care of ourselves. We don't go for regular checkups. If we are told we have something, we need to take medicine. We say, we are praying about it. We don't want to do that. We need to take care of ourselves. We need to eat well, eat healthy, drink water, exercise, do things that enhance our well-being and even our mental health. We need to do all of that. And if there's any problem between you and your children, I'm putting the onus on you to take the first step and call it truce. Because if you really reflect, you will see that there is something that you could have done better than you did. Just apologize for that, which is your own. And then you will see your children apologize. It is happened in our home when we had some situation that the children were on one side and my husband and I were on the other side, and it was an impasse. And my husband just started the apology and just said, you know what, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for this. And it was like magic. As soon as he said those words, they all started apologizing one after the other. And so call your child, ask for forgiveness, apologize for whatever you've done. And I'm sure that your child will also, at least with time, it might take time for them to trust that you really are sincere with what you are doing, but they will follow suit over time. And for children of immigrants, I ask that you continue to honor and respect. That you continue to honor and respect your parents, because it's a command from God that you honor your father and mother. And of course, we also have the instruction that we should not provoke our children, but continue to honor and respect them no matter what. Give them grace, give them forgiveness. That's why I talked about so many things of the way that we were raised really impact the way we raise our children. And so give them grace. And, if God gives you the grace to even be the one to speak to your parents first, even though I put the onus on them to do it, but if you can ask for their audience to talk to them and respectfully talk about whatever it is that you have felt and you have experienced growing up. And, if you yourself need to take therapy, if you need to take counseling, you might be more open to that than even your parents, and that will help you to be able to approach them. And I've seen situations where if you're not even able to talk to your parents, maybe they're insisting that you do this career and you want to do something else. They're insisting that you marry this person and you want to marry someone else. Sometimes you can find out, who your parents, who your parents' friends are, who they respect. You may talk to those people and say, I need to have a conversation with my parents, but I'm not able to. They are not allowing room for conversation. And then that person may be able to help you facilitate. In any case, take steps towards reconciliation so that you can do better. When I was talking about devotions, I was saying we should have devotions with our children. I've had some complaints from some immigrant children saying, our parents just use the same one that they use in church, the same one that is for adults, and we can't even connect. And I will tell you that when you have family devotion with your children, if you want your children to enjoy it, you need to make it relevant to them. When our children were growing up, the one we use is called Sticky Situations by Betty Smith. So she will have different scenarios, and then different responses. Like, if this happened, what will you do? A, B, C, D. And that gave them time to talk. That gave us time to respond, to just have a dialogue about it. Sometimes our children were the ones that conducted devotion, like, do it your way today. So we just have to make it relevant. And if you have toddlers, you have to find devotional that's relevant to them. You're trying to get them to know God, not just throwing everything down their throats. So let's just take a look at these mistakes, whichever one applies to you. Let's be humble. Let's be teachable to receive new information. Let's be willing to learn and do new information and to grow. And for our children of immigrants also, the same counsel. Just know that things can change with your parents, and the change can even start with you. So again, thank you very much for watching. There's a book that I wrote when all this was going on and I started working with immigrant parents and children. It's called The Immigration Gap: Bridging the Divide Between Parents and Children. So if there's a problem and you see something that's a solution and you don't look into it, then how do you expect the problem to be solved? So if anyone would like to have a better relationship with their children, you want to have a better relationship with your parents, or everything is going well, but you're just like, I just need to know how to figure out even all these things called parenting, especially as an immigrant, this book will be good for you. Go to Amazon and you can get it. And there's also a TEDx talk that I did just on parenting as immigrants. It just addresses some of the challenges that we have as immigrants in raising our children, and I also offer some tips there. So thank you very much again for Peter Abigail Foundation for giving me this opportunity, and I pray that God continue to bless you in what you do and how you continue to impact humanity, especially immigrants. Thank you very much for watching. God bless.